It's roughly 3,500 years ago in Egypt, and you have a problem that would destroy a modern person before breakfast. Your phone is dead, your watch does not exist, and nobody has invented the microwave clock that is always 3 minutes wrong. But the priest still needs to start the ritual. The farmer needs to know when the heat will become unbearable. The boatman on the Nile needs daylight, and someone is already late. No alarms, no calendar app, no smug notification saying, "Leave now to arrive on time." So how did ancient humans tell time without clocks? The answer is not they guessed. Ancient people were not wandering around saying, "Feels like Tuesday." Long before mechanical clocks, they watched the sun, the stars, water, shadows, seasons, birds, plants, and the annoying fact that nature repeats itself with suspicious discipline. Time was not just a number, it was survival. It told people when to plant, when to travel, when to pray, when to sleep, and when not to be caught in the desert pretending confidence was a weather strategy. Start with ancient Egypt, the civilization that looked at the desert sun and said, "Great, let's turn that burning skyball into office equipment." Around 1500 BCE, Egyptians used a portable shadow clock, basically a bar with marks and a raised piece that cast a shadow across them. In the morning, it faced one way, and at noon, flipped it around for the afternoon. Simple, elegant, very Egyptian, practical enough for daily life, but dramatic enough to belong beside a temple. It only worked when the sun was visible, which in Egypt was usually fine, because the sky there was not constantly having an emotional crisis like Europe. But daytime was only half the problem. Temples also needed night hours, because the gods apparently kept a schedule too. That is where the water clock from Karnak, connected to the reign of Amenhotep III, around 1415 to 1380 BCE, becomes important. It used dripping water and marked lines inside a vessel to measure time after sunset, drop by drop, hour by hour. In Egyptian culture, this was not just about catching an early meeting. It helped priests time rituals, track sacred duties, and make the universe feel orderly. If the ritual happened at the right hour, the world stayed balanced. If not, nobody wanted to be the intern who annoyed Ra. Then came Mesopotamia, especially the Babylonians, the ancient world's spreadsheet people, except their spreadsheet was the night sky, and it had no undo button. By the first millennium BCE, Babylonian astronomical texts like mul.apin listed stars, risings, settings, and celestial patterns that helped organize the calendar and divide the night. They did not just look up and say, "Pretty." They measured, they recorded. They turned the sky into a system. This mattered because Mesopotamia had cities, temples, trade, taxes, farming seasons, and kings who enjoyed acting like cosmic order depended on paperwork. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, claimed the Greeks learned the gnomon, the sundial, and the 12 parts of the day from the Babylonians, which is very Herodotus, half historian, half that dinner party guy with a confident take on everything. Were they turning the sky into a giant clock? Yes. Yes, they were. The method was simple. Follow shadows by day, follow stars by night, and divide time into chunks that priests, officials, traders, and astronomers could use. But the meaning was bigger. If you could predict the moon, organize festivals, and warn people about eclipses, you did not just know the time. You looked like you had private support from the universe. Now jump to ancient China, where timekeeping was less, "What hour is lunch?" and more, "Can the empire stay synchronized with heaven?" At Taosi, around 2100 to 2000 BCE, archaeologists have studied evidence connected to gnomon shadow measurements, showing that early Chinese observers were already using shadows to track solar movement and seasonal change. Later, Chinese traditions, including the Zhoubi Suanjing, treated the gnomon not as a random stick, but as a serious scientific instrument. A stick, in the ground, but with bureaucracy. Beautiful. The practice was direct. Measure the shadow, compare it with seasonal patterns, and use that information for solstices, calendars, agriculture, and state rituals. Chinese water clocks also became important. Written references to them appear by the 6th century BCE, and by around 200 BCE, inflow water clocks with floating indicator rods were replacing older outflow designs. The idea was simple. Water moves at a controlled pace. The float rises, and passing time becomes visible. In China, this mattered because time was government. A ruler who managed the calendar well looked aligned with heaven. A ruler who got it wrong risked looking like the cosmos had unsubscribed from his leadership. Bad harvest? Wrong ritual date? Strange eclipse? Suddenly, the emperor's approval rating was being reviewed by the sky. Fun fact, the time zones we take for granted are shockingly modern. In the United States, standardized railway time only took effect on November 18, 1883, because trains moving fast through hundreds of local solar times were a scheduling nightmare. So, yes, ancient Egyptians could measure night hours with water thousands of years ago, but humanity still needed railroads to realize that every town invents its own noon was not brilliant. So, how did ancient humans tell time without clocks? They made clocks out of the world. A shadow became an hour hand. A star became an alarm. A dripping bowl became a machine. A season became a calendar. They did not need glowing screens to understand that the universe moved in patterns. They needed patience, memory, and enough curiosity to stare at the same shadow every day until it made sense. Maybe that is the real lesson. Timekeeping began as survival, became religion, turned into science, and eventually became the tiny glowing rectangle that tells you you are late again. Ancient people were not less intelligent because they lacked modern devices. In some ways, they were forced to notice more. They read the sky, the water, the fields, and the dark. They listened to the world because the world was their clock. The next time you check the time, remember, you are doing something ancient, just with more battery anxiety.